Tonight on The ReidOut.
Steve Bannon is an agent of chaos. Steve Bannon, in his own words, believes you have to basically burn the system down to rebuild it and fix it.
Steve Bannon on trial in the first of several major developments this week related to the Capitol insurrection. And right now, the Secret Service is getting ready to hand over subpoenaed text messages as the January 6th committee gets ready for Thursday's primetime hearing on the 187 minutes when Trump did nothing to quell the violence. In Uvalde, Texas, it was 77 minutes that police, hundreds of them, did nothing as children were being murdered. What a damning new report reveals about policing in Uvalde and beyond. We begin with a day in court for Steve Bannon, the right-wing podcaster and one-time advisor to the twice-impeached former president. His trial for contempt of Congress got underway today. Jury selection wrapped just a short time ago after two last-minute attempts by Bannon's team to delay the trial, including an offer to testify before the January 6th committee. Narrowing the jury pool from the 22 eligible jurors will resume tomorrow. Bannon faces two misdemeanor contempt charges for his refusal to comply with an order to turn over records to the committee. True to form, after today's proceedings wrapped, the podcaster said he's looking forward to tomorrow. Then he attacked the committee's work.
I think we'd have been more productive if we'd been on Capitol Hill in front of open mics addressing the nation with exactly all this nonsense, this show trial they've been putting up on Capitol Hill. It's nothing but a show trial. It's time they start having other witnesses. They can give other testimony other than what they've been putting up. And so we'll see you here tomorrow morning. I want to thank the judge. Thank everybody.
Oh, color me shocked. Now, in his offer to testify, Bannon did not offer to turn over documents. And last week, the committee laid out two key reasons why he is on their witness list.
The committee has learned from the White House phone logs that the president spoke to Steve Bannon, his close advisor, at least twice on January 5th. The first conversation they had lasted for 11 minutes. Listen to what Mr. Bannon said that day after the first call he had with the president.
All hell is going to break loose tomorrow. It's all converging, and now we're on, as they say, the point of attack.
The committee is also seeking other communications from January 5th and 6th, subpoenaing the United States Secret Service over deleted text messages from those 2 days. The agency has been asked to provide the committee with those records by tomorrow. Those deleted texts could provide key information from witnesses to the former president's behavior, not the least of which is that alleged altercation between Trump and two Secret Service agents in an SUV, described by former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson. In the meantime, the committee is ramping up for a blockbuster primetime hearing on Thursday, focusing on the former president's 187 minutes of inaction as the mob laid siege to the Capitol. One of the members leading Thursday's hearing, Republican Adam Kinzinger, said the committee will fill in those blanks.
This is going to open people's eyes in a big way. The reality is, I'll give you this preview, the president didn't do very much, but gleefully watched television during this time frame. We're going to present a lot more than that. But I could only imagine I knew what I felt like as a U.S. congressman. If I was a president sworn to defend the Constitution, that includes the legislative branch, watching this on television, I know I would have been going ballistic to try to save the Capitol. He did quite the opposite.
The other member leading Thursday's hearing, Democrat Elaine Luria, who, like Kinzinger, is also a military veteran, said the committee will provide a minute-by-minute accounting.
And not only was it a situation of not doing anything, at one point, the infamous tweet we know at 2:24, he actually egged people on by saying Vice President Pence didn't have the courage to, quote-unquote, do the right thing. I look at it as a dereliction of duty. He didn't act. He had a duty to act. So we will address that in a lot of detail.
Luria also said the panel will present more testimony from former White House counsel Pat Cipollone and new witnesses that we haven't heard from. And yet another sign that the committee is zeroing in on the former president's inner circle, especially in the lead up to the 6th. The committee will interview Garrett Ziegler, a former aide to Trump advisor Peter Navarro, tomorrow. Now, that's relevant because the members of the so-called Team Crazy, Michael Flynn and Sidney Powell, showed up at the White House for that December 18 meeting to push their voter fraud story time. Well, that aide, Garrett Ziegler, escorted them in. As a result, Meadows revoked his guest admitting privileges. In the wee hours of the morning following that meeting, The former president sent out the now infamous "Be There, It Will Be Wild" tweet summoning the mob to Washington on the 6th. All the more reason that the former president should be concerned about his legal liability, even as he's reportedly preparing to announce a 2024 presidential run. According to a new Rolling Stone report, he is planning on running to run away from his legal troubles with various criminal probes. In recent months, Trump has made clear to associates that the legal protections of occupying the Oval Office are front of mind for him. Four people with knowledge of the situation tell Rolling Stone, adding, Trump himself seems to acknowledge potential problems. He said something like, prosecutors couldn't get away with this while I was president. With me now, Paul Butler, professor at Georgetown Law School and a former federal prosecutor, and Kurt Bardella, advisor to the DNC and the DCCC. Thank you both for being here. And I will start with you on this first, Paul, because it does seem that Donald Trump, he may not be the brightest bulb in the fixture, but he understands that he is much less likely to be indicted if he is a candidate for president. The already cautious Merrick Garland would probably not go after him if he were running, or am I getting that wrong?
Well, what you're getting right is that Trump is trying to play Garland by speeding up his announcement about running for president. Then if Trump is prosecuted, he will say it's the Biden administration going after him to help Biden win re-election. Merrick Garland should not fall for that. The Attorney General will make the decision about whether to prosecute Trump in consultation with career lawyers in my former squad, the Public Integrity Section of the United States Department of Justice, based on the guidelines that they use in every case. Joy, running for president is not a defense to a crime. If Trump is not held accountable in criminal court, the message sent is that a president can commit the most serious crimes, even sedition, and get away with it.
And that is the challenge, right? Of course, Kurt, Donald Trump doesn't care about the law or anything like that. He hopes that he can get back in office and clear away everything by taking control of the Justice Department like he tried to do before. But I wonder if he's got to be wondering to himself who's loyal, right? I'm just thinking about the people who were in that meeting. So these key meetings, December 18th is the one where they said the so-called crazies were there. That's Sidney Powell, Michael Flynn, the Overstock guy who Pat Cipollone was like, who are you? And some others, Rudy Giuliani, of course, who were in there with people like Eric Hirschman, Meadows, Cipollone, and, Hirschman reportedly being very clear that this was all bananas crazy and that it shouldn't be done. He's got to be wondering who's loyal. I mean, so far, Trump's people have stuck with him. I mean, you had Peter Navarro declined a pretty decent plea offer. He could now face more jail time because he wouldn't take a plea. And I guess Trump has to be wondering how many people are like that, maybe hoping he gets back in office and pardons them.
Well, that's clearly the plan, right? I mean, everything that we're seeing from Donald Trump right now is about trying to regain the reins of power so that he can pardon himself and his accomplices for his crimes. And as Paul just said, running for president doesn't exonerate you from your crimes. It's not a cloak or a shield that can be used. What needs to happen is the prosecutors need to just gather the evidence and decide whether they have the goods to charge him or not, and make that decision independent of any of the political theory that we're going to see. Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, these people, they are not shy. They are not afraid to try to weaponize the campaign process in order to keep themselves out of prison. Steve Bannon has made it pretty clear that that's his play for this entire time. That's why it's so important with this trial beginning of his contempt of Congress proceeding that there is accountability, because if there actually is accountability, if Steve Bannon ends up going to jail, that will tell every single person who thinks that they're going to stand by Donald Trump, they're going to have to rethink that, because I don't think there's anybody who's actually willing to spend one day in jail for Donald Trump, because we know with Donald Trump, loyalty is not a two-way street. He would throw all of them under the bus to avoid any kind of accountability. You have to think that it would probably be the same if the shoe were on the other foot.
Yeah, I mean, they should ask Michael Cohen how that normally works out. Let me ask you about that, Paul, because Steve Bannon came out there, made a very bravado statement, which obviously was aimed at an audience of one, at Donald Trump, of him saying, yeah, let me get in there and do my theatrical stuff, which the Justice Department ain't going to do, which the committee ain't going to let him do. If you're the prosecutors looking at Steve Bannon as somebody who maybe he was in on it or maybe wasn't in on the planning for the insurrection, but he sure as hell did seem to know that all hell was going to break loose, and he said that the day before.
Yeah, so if Bannon had done what anybody else would legally be required to do, show up and tell the truth, the House investigation would have been advanced. We already know Bannon and Trump spoke twice on January 5th. It was after one of those conversations that Bannon said, all hell is going to break loose. And we know that Bannon was in the insurrection war room on January 6th. But at this point, Joy, the trial is not about trying to force Bannon to cooperate. Now prosecutors just want Bannon punished for deliberately ignoring a congressional subpoena.